What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today. I am Sean Murphy, joined by a special guest. He is a basketball coach who spent quite a few years with the Denver Nuggets, currently is coaching in the Adidas circuit. Jordan Bickerstaff, you might recognize that last name. A lot of people jump to the conclusion that he might have a relation to the Pistons coach. Jordan, I want to clarify, you are JB Bickerstaff's nephew, not his son,
That's
like a lot of people jump to.
yeah,
But
that's correct. I know we look alike, but yeah, that's my uncle.
definitely, yeah, definitely share a resemblance. But you're a dang good coach in your own right, and
Hmm.
someone that I've really enjoyed chatting with. Jordan, dude, seriously, thanks so much for being here, man.
No, I appreciate you for having me on, man. It's always fun to talk basketball for sure with like mine. So happy to be
Yeah,
here.
yeah, absolutely, man. Just I've really enjoyed our interactions. Obviously, I've told you, quite a bit how much I've really enjoyed, being able to interact and talk hoops with your uncle and in the media
Hmm.
aspect. One thing, because I want to talk playoffs. I want to hear your perspective on like how the Pistons did, but also just your finals thoughts, things that we've seen all throughout the playoffs. But one thing I just kind of asked you about this a little bit before we recorded, but obviously, it all started with Bernie Bickerstaff, and then obviously your uncle JB is a great coach in his own right too. You've worked in the league. You're a coach who has aspirations too, and it takes a special type of human being to be in the coaching business. It's not an easy thing. It's if anything, it takes almost like a sicko, if I mean that, and like as a compliment.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I kind of talked to you beforehand, and just curious of your thoughts of, is that something that is almost just kind of like embedded into like who you are, as like kind of growing up so close to the game of basketball? Is that something you felt like that was like imprinted that you were going to do ever since you were a kid? Or is that
Hmm.
kind of something that like you just feel like was just naturally came along as you grew older and were like, oh yeah, no, I see why our family is a family of coaches?
Yeah. I think it was definitely a combination of both. Like from an early age, I think you can ask like anybody who knew me, like they kind of knew basketball was my thing. Like I just kind of obviously just naturally gravitated towards it, like playing on those little mini tyke hoops that only go up to like 6 feet. Like I have distinct memories of doing that in the living room and stuff. I remember almost like shooting on it and like damn near like breaking my grandmother's chandelier in her house in DC and just being
Yeah.
so scared about it. So yeah, no, you definitely, I think it was definitely pretty early on that people knew I was going to do something with basketball, and I just generally loved it. And obviously, growing up in the family I grew up in, you have an opportunity to see it at the highest level for a very long time. So you grow up in these locker rooms, you do the ball boy experience, you see a whole lot on and off the court, and it points you in a direction either you're going to really love it or you're going to really hate it. And I grew up just kind of loving it, just from being on the sidelines while my grandfather was coaching in like with the Bobcats, or like even on like those drive ins to the arena. Sometimes like I would go with him and he would just like listen to jazz, but it would just be like a real like meditative moment. Like he's getting ready to go prepare to go do this thing that he loves, but it's also in like a serious business. So it was really cool to grow up in that type of environment, year in and year out, and just kind of see that the inner workings of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who's been able to kind of, be able to get up close to it a little bit more, it kind of lets you gain a little bit more of a different level of respect, just like the level of seriousness that everyone takes into it, the
Hmm.
preparation, the high intensity of competition. I know a lot of people, minimize, like the 82 game regular season, but like I can assure you that like the people in the building, in the locker rooms, that go out there each and every night, like there's no off nights for them. Each night, is a night where you're going out and you're fighting for not only for your season, but you're fighting for your careers, for your jobs, for your livelihoods.
Hmm. Yeah, you don't really like, you kind of get a sense of how serious it is, but then like once you're in it for sure, like you definitely get like a sense of like, oh, this is our life. Like this is a paycheck. This is how we put food on the table for our families. This is how we provide for everybody. So like you want to take it serious, and you obviously want to be great at it. And to be great at it, you kind of got to really dive in head first and make it your priority. So it's really cool to see that from like a coach's perspective, and then to kind of like go in on a few days when I'm out there on breaks visiting them or whatever, and just kind of see like how the whole process works of going from coaching at home, driving into the arena, and then coaching a basketball team full of professional superstars, and then the repeated process of that over and over again throughout the years is pretty insightful.
Yeah, for sure. Having to juggle egos, having to manage playing time, having to
Mm-hmm.
get everyone to buy in on a common vision night in, night out when they might not necessarily see that vision all the time. It's a real grind, but
Mm-hmm.
that's why, the real good ones are appreciated, because that's takes a special individual to thrive in that business and to do well. And, you know, uh yeah, man, it's just I always love talking to coaches and just hearing, their insight and stuff, because, you know, to have that level of love for the game, first of all, hoops, but also, like, you got to be good with working with people too.
Yeah,
It's very much a multifaceted job.
for sure.
Um, I kind of want to ask, before I have a couple like Pistons questions and your thoughts on how they did and things like that. But I just want to know in general, what was like your favorite storyline or favorite series, or could you even just be like a team that you watch in this postseason that you kind of gravitated to? Because to me, this has been a really fun, electric postseason with a lot of buzzer beaters, with a lot of close back and forth games, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of upsets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say one team that I definitely like tend to gravitate towards is just the Pacers in general. Not just because they're in the finals, but just I've always been a fan of like teams that play fast and just go up and down a lot. I
Yep.
always think that's just been like a really great way to play, especially in today's NBA. It's just suited for the type of talent that's out there. Just run and gun, get to the basket, shoot a lot of threes, and then you've got your superstars kind of in the half court taking control of what goes on, either Pascal Siakam in the post or Tyrese Halliburton kind of finding guys. But I feel like they just have a really good like balance of basketball. And coming from like a basketball town in Indiana, it's really cool to like see that come together for sure. And then always like following, like I still like keep up with Denver. Like it's just kind of cool to see their journey, and just kind of see how they continue to elevate themselves. And obviously when you work so closely with just that staff and a player as great as Nikola, like it's just you always kind of like tend to keep in and like keep in touch and just see how they're doing. And you want to see them do well, obviously, for like the coaches I know over there and the players and stuff. So those are two teams, besides the Pistons, obviously, that I kind of tend to keep an eye on. But in general, just like the teams that get up and down. I like shooting. Golden State's always a fun watch. Um, Boston can be a little tricky here and there, obviously, like when they do make threes or don't. But
Yeah.
I think this playoffs was like a really good showcase of like the different styles that are out there,
Yes.
and like the different types of success you can have. You can play grit and grind basketball like the Pistons do. You can get up and down like the Pacers. You can get scrappy with guys and kind of get into guys, switch 1 through 5 like the Rockets. Or you can play through the center like the Nuggets. So it's just been a really cool balance of different hoops.
Yeah, 100%. I think you pointed out something that I think is just really, fascinating. It's just the multiple varieties of style and philosophies that teams play basketball and approach the game, and how they try, to win on a night in, night out basis. And I feel like, one of the predominant narratives from, the basketball fan who might not tune in depth as, like, you and I might, or like a lot of basketball junkies might. But I think one of the, myths, so to speak, that's kind of surrounding the game is how much everyone plays the same and everyone's just looking to shoot the three. When
Mhm.
in reality, I feel like even like just this conference finals that we saw between, the Pacers and the Knicks was like a great, example of two teams that are completely different and try to
Mhm.
play basketball in a completely different way.
Mhm.
And even like the Pacers, I think they're going to be, a team that a lot of people look at going forward as like the model of how do you succeed in this modern NBA with, with all of the complexities of the new salary cap. Because make no mistake about it, it is a hard cap,
Yeah.
and you have to walk a delicate tightrope to have a competitive team. And for the Pacers to do what they've done, in such a short amount of time, with a lot of young players who are playing really well in their roles,
Mhm.
alongside, by the way, probably the best acquisition in the league, low key, in the last few years. Pascal Siakam, him
Mhm.
and probably Drew Holiday have probably been two of the most effective acquisitions when you talk about title impact. So
I throw Aaron Gordon in there as well, but yeah, no, for sure,
absolutely. Yeah,
for sure.
huge Aaron Gordon fan. I think he cemented himself as like the most underrated player in the league this year, just with like everything that he showcased in the postseason. Like I think everyone knew that he was a great athlete, obviously from his time in Orlando. A lot of people just knew him from his dunk competitions and
Hmm.
being the number one guy in Orlando on a team that wasn't necessarily had a whole lot of aspirations. But then to go to Denver and to
Hmm.
essentially become like what people see as like Draymond Green on crack is essentially what I think Aaron Gordon became, because his game is so much deeper than that. Like his expansion of the 3-point shot, his high IQ on both sides of the court. Like
Hmm.
Aaron Gordon to me is just, his impact on winning cannot be overstated to me.
No, not at all. He was the definition of like what a perfect fit is. Like even when we first got him, like I think we went like 10-1, and it was just like a very clear fit. Like, oh, this is exactly what they needed, and it's gonna
Yep.
work eventually. Like it's, I think like that was the year. Unfortunately, Jamal got hurt, but like it was very clear that, oh, this Denver's gonna be a problem with this. Like they figured out something, and then you
Yeah,
see it
like what a
again with,
perfect player to put alongside
yeah,
Nikola Jokic, who's probably, the guy who elevates his teammates the most in the NBA, perhaps maybe we've ever seen. But at least in the last decade, I'd say it's like him and LeBron are the
yeah,
guys that can truly elevate their teammates to another level.
for sure. And then like you see it again, like you said with Drew Holiday. Yeah, like there's just different ways that like they're different. Like it feels like almost every year or almost every couple of years, like there's like a move that like really puts a team over the top, and you look back and you go like, oh, that was really like the one that kind of like that changed things a little bit for them, like Pascal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, I think they looked at, like this season, I think they looked at things like like obviously the Karl Anthony Towns move was huge. The Luka Doncic move, I think everyone put the Lakers instantly in contention after that. But I think in reality,
Hmm.
you see that it takes so much more than having an all-star player. Like, yes, those are the things that drive you, towards contention, but it's really the ancillary pieces, the contributors, the role players, the pieces that complete the puzzle, so to speak.
Hmm.
Like those are really what drives a team towards true contention. And I think that's what you've seen with a team like Indiana.
Yeah, no, I think we're definitely in an era now of league-wide basketball where like it's not necessarily about having like a big three. It's more kind of like having about like a core, and
Yep.
then around those guys, you like might kind of make some moves here and there every once in a while. But really, like you have to find that core group of guys that works well together, and you got to like just let them build their chemistry, because that's really what it's all about. Like if guys can't be in like the thick of things, they can't go down 10 and know that like they can trust the other teammates that they have, like it's not going to be a good team that's going to have a lot of success. So you got to really like develop your core and like make sure the pieces around them all fit and complement them well. So
Yep. Jordan, that was actually a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next, which, the Detroit Pistons, the team I mainly cover, the team that, this is an NBA podcast, but we talk primarily a lot of Pistons. They're kind of in that interesting spot where, they had a very competitive first round series with the Knicks, to where, you could argue that if Jaden Ivey and Isaiah Stewart were healthy, the Knicks might not have gotten out of the first round, let alone
hmm.
get to the conference finals the way that they did. And
Hmm.
that was a hard fought series. I can tell you firsthand. I was there for game 6, and I had to walk from when you go down the elevators, the press rooms kind of by the away room.
Hmm.
So to get to like where like the Pistons media room is, it's like on the other side.
Gotcha.
So I had to walk by the Knicks locker room after they clinched that series.
Yeah.
Dude, when I tell you it sounded like they clinched a finals appearance,
Yeah.
like don't get me wrong. I'm sure teams celebrate winning a playoff series. That is a big accomplishment. I do not want to minimize that.
Hmm.
But for the Pistons to go from a 14-win team that had a 28 game losing streak and the lows that they had, to within a year, a Knicks team with true title with true title aspirations, literally
Hmm.
hollering and celebrating getting out of that series the way that they did. I
Yeah.
think if you're the Pistons, I think you have a lot of reasons to feel good about what you've established and, just kind of where you're at. I was just curious, from your thoughts of watching that series and just, from your outside perspective, watching the team, kind of what your thoughts have been on how they did.
I mean, I think they obviously did great. They had a great first year under this new staff, new regime. Success seems like it's something that's going to be sustainable around these parts. Like I don't see Detroit going anywhere but up. They've got a young superstar in Cade Cunningham. They've got Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duran. Like they've really got their core group. And then they're putting those pieces together around and figure out what works, what doesn't. And so you're obviously going to see I think you're going to see a big increase in kind of what Detroit does and who Detroit is, even bigger than what you saw this past year, just because the league is kind of it's a better place when Detroit is good. You know what I'm saying? Just because they
100%.
provide a contrasting style to what you typically see on a night by night basis. And I know even just the city of Detroit, but there's other people in other cities in America and around the world that can just appreciate the style of basketball that they bring to the game. And so I think putting Detroit back on the map is going to be really good for just the league in general, not just the city, but I think just the league in general is going to be a beneficiary of what's going on with the Pistons.
Yeah. I might have a biased view because I've grown up, in the Pistons sphere. The team I started with was, the 04 team. I kind of got to grow up with going to work Pistons and like when I was a kid going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Not only was that a regular thing, that was the expectation. The Pistons essentially dominated the 2000s in the Eastern Conference from that standpoint. But I think there's just certain teams that the league is a lot better off when they are thriving. I think the Knicks are one of those teams as we've obviously seen with their success. I think the Pacers are one of those teams just with how ingrained basketball is in the state of Indiana, how much they love their Pacers. I think the Pistons are absolutely one of those teams with when you look at, the history that the Pistons have and their relationship with the game of basketball and the league. When the Pistons are good and they have a reason to show up and Detroit has a reason to show up and show out, I think as they showed to a lot of people, those atmospheres were crazy. And, there's no consolation prizes in the game of basketball in the NBA, but if there's anything that you can do outside of hanging a banner, it's reinvigorating a fan base, reinvigorating a city towards their franchise. They don't hang up banners for that, but in my opinion, when you have that historic turnaround and maintain something like that, that's about as good of a season as you can have outside of hanging a banner.
100%. And I think the city knows that as well. Like you said, they showed up and showed out every game. Even in the playoffs, you could hear from the TV, that atmosphere was just looked crazy, seemed crazy. And yeah, I think
my ears were hurting for days. It was nuts, bro.
Yeah. And I think just going forward from here on out, just with Detroit being, good and just continuing to climb the ladder, it's going to be, like I said, beneficial for the league. There is, like you said, there's no consolation prizes. Every team goes into the season wanting one goal, and that's win the championship.
Yep.
But when you kind of bring back this sort of sense of goodwill and just good energy the Pistons did this season, you can, that's really all you can ask for. When the place of work is just a place that you want to the guys want to come into every day, you can't ask for much more than that, and it just gives you hope for the next season and the next season. So,
yep. And from a fan's perspective, what more can you ask for than hope, right? That is the ultimate thing that you need as a fan to get excited, to keep going, to be motivated to keep tuning in, and that's the thing that ignites fandom in itself. So yeah, it's going to be a fun time for sure. It's going to be fascinating because as a lot of people have been kind of talking about, my favorite national reporter, Brian Windhorst, the Mr. Two Fingers himself. He's heard from a lot of executives that they are expecting a lot of, a lot of things to potentially happen this offseason. As far as moves, like those are, we don't know what can come, whether or not Giannis is going to move. I think that's the big domino. Kevin Durant
Mhm.
is like the number one guy that I think we all have a good idea that he's not going to be in Phoenix next season. But the thing we're hearing is that the level of calls and the level of activity of talks this time of year is currently a lot higher than it normally is. So it
Mhm.
sounds like at the very least, teams are bracing for impact for what could be a crazy summer. And
Mhm.
obviously, I know a lot of people, like a lot of fans, they want to they want to approach things like they're playing 2K and just throw up the trade machine, go get all the stars, load up and all those things. But it's an interesting, delicate tightrope that you have to walk because on one hand, like, yeah, sure, you can go out and like you can make improvements, to your roster, but at the same
Mhm.
time, I don't think it's like people are like, oh yeah, just throw like a Tobias Harris in a trade. I don't think people can underestimate just how important those types of guys are to your culture and,
Mhm.
just to your team as a whole. Like I heard JB say multiple times firsthand, that guy is so important to what we do. Like he is an extension of the coaching staff on the court. And unless you have someone that is ready to come in and replace that with either that same like relationship or just with high level of production,
Mhm.
then I think that that's just, a massive mistake to trade away culture guys like that so quickly. But
Yeah.
again, I understand that salaries have to match and you have to do all these things to make a team work. So
Mhm.
it's interesting to ponder, like what Trajan does with, given what the offseason could look like.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, like we saw it this season, like with the Luka trade, like there's just anything can happen. And so
Yeah.
I'm even of the mindset that like, I mean, I don't have any like sources or anything. This is just complete guess, but like,
Oh, for sure.
I think something like maybe there might be like a big blockbuster deal this summer too, that like, or like someone might go somewhere that no one expected. I think that's definitely on the table this year as well. And then once that happens, like the dominoes are just going to start falling. So
Yeah.
we could be in for an interesting one, or we could be in for more guys just go back where they're supposed to, and it's just, oh, let's just move along the margins and kind of again. We'll see though. It'll be
Yeah.
fun.
I think one thing's for sure is that if it's not this summer, I think at some point there is going to be a lot of shuffling of the pieces, so to speak, because of the fact that there is such a hard cap that
Hmm.
you can't necessarily just continue to, hope for the best if you're some of these teams. Like continuity's crucial. And I think that's something that you can't really understate. Like I think Denver was like a great sample of like how much continuity can really, like help and impact like winning and building a culture and things like that. But at the same time, not every team has that ceiling. And if you keep waiting, the progress isn't always up. It's not always linear.
Hmm.
So, I think at some point we are going to see a genuine, shuffle and arms race, so to speak. I just think things like the Tatum Achilles tear, the Dame Achilles tear, those unfortunate injuries could be true catalysts because the balance of power in the Eastern
Hmm.
Conference and throughout the league as a whole is really kind of up for grabs for some of these teams that could be looking to ascend.
Yeah, and we're seeing that sort of like just the parity in general around the league. Like we
Yep.
haven't had a back-to-back champion in I don't know how many years, but
I think this is going to be the seventh different title that we've
yeah,
had in
yeah,
7 years or something like that.
and you're seeing teams who aren't usually or haven't been in like the conversation in a while. Like we're just seeing like now that we're going to see a Pacers OKC finals. Like we're going to see a new champion, so it's going to be really cool um, to see and just like kind of just see how the league grows in general, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I know people like the casual fan or people on ESPN or whatever, people go to, oh, well, the two small markets. And I hate that a lot of people are going to focus on this finals from a ratings perspective because, first of all, if you truly like basketball, who cares about the ratings? They just signed a massive media deal. They're doing perfectly fine
Yeah,
from that standpoint. But
yeah,
on top of that, if you truly tune into these games or know like these two teams, like this is an awesome basketball matchup. Like these are
Mm-hmm.
two young, competitive, feisty teams that can explode on both sides of the court, that play with a lot of pace, that can force turnovers and wreak havoc in return. You're seeing the two hottest teams in the league since January 1st. They have the two best records in the NBA from that span. And, like you're seeing two teams that very well can be in this picture for years to come, especially Oklahoma City. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, for someone that might know them a little bit more, kind of like intimately, as someone that watches hoops and things like that, as someone who's had to go up against them, kind of over the years, so to speak. To me, I watch a lot of them as well. What makes them so dominant that people just aren't grasping to for whatever reason? Because this is a team that I think should be respected and feared for a lot of reasons. I mean, they've had a dominant playoff run.
Mhm. I think they just provide like a general sense of like 48 minutes of just tough basketball, like regardless of who they're bringing in off the bench, like like those guys can go.
Yep.
So they're going to go on both ends of the court, defense and offense, and so you're going to be in for it for like a long night, a long series. So I think that's definitely something to be respected. They know who they are. Like that's another thing. Like sometimes you can get guys who kind of like they want to be this guy or they want to be taking these shots or whatever. But a lot of guys, like it's tough to be in a role and accept that. And these, even Indiana, like I posed the question earlier on Twitter, like I don't like who has the deeper roster, OKC or Indiana. I still don't know. I
Yeah.
hope like I'm curious to find that out this finals if we do. But yeah, I just think OKC and Indiana just provide like that sense of like team basketball and like just 48 minutes of like up and down, fast pace, active on like active hands defensively. Like they're going to get into you. Even those bigs like Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, Miles Turner, like those are guys that protect the rim and they have good hands on the perimeter. So like it's going to be just 48 minutes of like just fun, intense basketball.
Yeah. And it's actually surprising looking at just, looking at their basketball reference pages. The Thunder actually technically ranked higher in pace this season than the Pacers did, which is really interesting. And I
That's
also
crazy.
saw a stat that I think the Thunder ended up going 29-1 against the Eastern Conference this season,
Damn.
which that's
Yeah.
just crazy in
That's
and of
crazy.
itself.
Yeah.
Um, and to your point, like when you look top to bottom at their rosters, it is pretty equal from a depth standpoint. I might
Mm-hmm.
lean Oklahoma City, but even then, the reason why I have to say that is because I'm truly nitpicking. Like I'm going to like their second and third centers and like who they can play,
Yeah.
like off the wing, like truly. And like the other thing I'm factoring in is where's Aaron Nesmith's ankle going to be at? Like I know he's going to be in treatment probably 24/7 up until June 5th when the finals tip off. But if
Yeah.
he's someone that can't be close to 100%, that definitely doesn't tip the scales in Indiana's favor from that standpoint. But to your point, it is not far off at all. Indiana's probably one of the only other teams that can challenge Oklahoma City from a depth standpoint.
Yeah. Like I feel like these are two teams where like they can like let their star players sit and you're still going to get 48 minutes of like pretty high level basketball. Like there's some teams where like you can put their starters down, you're kind of like, oh, like we kind of just got to hold on. But no, these are two teams where like SGA or Tyrese can like sit, or like we've even seen Tyrese not have like the best of games, like maybe shooting wise, but the team around him is just so good that they're like, we're good, we got it, we'll pick them up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be a good battle to see for sure. And who cares about, like you said, who cares about the ratings? Like it, I don't know when we all became Nielsen rating people. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Last
I
time I
think
checked, we're not television executives, we're
that's what I'm
basketball
saying.
fans.
Like, who cares? I think it'll be cool to see. Like, we've got two fan bases that are like they wear the shirts. Like,
Yeah.
it'll be cool to see both those environments on TV. Like, this will be like a real finals setting. I think.
Yeah, exactly. If you are a basketball fan, you will tune in and recognize, oh shoot, this is a unique finals and a really fun matchup that we haven't really seen something like this in quite a while. As far as
Mm-hmm.
two young up and coming teams. Both have the opportunity to win, their first championships ever for their franchise. That's huge.
Yep.
And, for the Thunder, like if they win the championship, I think this is like really like kind of almost a like Sam Presti coronation moment in a sense of he got 3 MVPs with the first roster he built back in the day, obviously underachieved, squandered away James Harden before he became that MVP, but to build this roster on top of it as well, and acquire all these picks and to hit on so many of them is just crazy. And to have an archetype that like he just sticks to, and the level to identify guys that not only fit their scheme but fit the way that they play and their locker room and everything, and can play right away. It's just something that's crazy. Like, this team's younger than the Pistons.
Yeah.
And the Pistons are young.
Yeah. And they're in the finals just beating up on teams. It's impressive. Sam Presti he's an impressive dude for sure.
Yeah, their most seasoned veteran is Alex Caruso.
Yeah.
And Alex Caruso is a young guy, all things considered.
Yeah. And he's playing his ass off. Like, I would love if Brent Usher is listening to this, I would love to see a 4-minute highlight tape of just Alex Caruso blowing up DHOs. Like, his defense sometimes is like, damn.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of the trade. I was because earlier I said a lot of people look at, like the Luka Doncic trade and go, oh, well, that's the trade that could change the title. But in reality, that's a trade for the long term. The trade that really could have determined the title this year is the Alex Caruso trade.
Mm-hmm.
Which for the fact that the Bulls didn't get a first round pick. I mean, yes, they got Josh Giddey, who showed some moments this year, but
no doubt.
I mean, good Lord, Alex Caruso is just so good.
Another perfect fit, right?
Yeah.
Like, just another seamless transition of, like, you see the trade and you're like, that's probably going to work out really well for them. And
well, he was in Oklahoma City's G League team, and there was actually a photo that was going around of Mark Daigneault coaching Alex Caruso when they were both part of OKC's G League program. And now here they are all those years later leading the NBA roster to the finals. Like, what a cool story.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to the Thunder. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. But on the other side, like, I know a lot of people are writing off the Pacers, but like, I think they have a lot of reasons to feel, pretty confident about where they're at. And I think like Pascal Siakam is like one of the biggest playoff risers like that we've seen. Obviously I think like Jamal Murray fits into that, category, a guy who takes his game to another level, but this is a guy who has, like some real signature playoff performances now and had multiple 30-point games in that Knicks series. He's just, I think that's just a trade. If you're Indiana, you just feel really good about like what makes him so dangerous.
Just how dynamic he is. He can post you up down low. He can post up smaller guards, or he can go out on the perimeter and get his own shot. He can handle in the pick and roll. Like, I saw a clip today of they attacked the Brunson hedge, and it was, I forgot who set the screen, but it was Pascal. I think it was Neesmith setting a screen, and Pascal was handling, and he hit Neesmith on a roll, wide open look. So he can do everything on the basketball floor, and he is a guy that, like, he's not even really their like first option. Like, it's obviously Tyrese, but like, he's definitely like someone that like you can give the ball to and just like, go get us a bucket, please, bro.
Yeah.
And you need guys like that. And he's one, saw in Toronto, and now we're seeing it here in Indiana. That's just like, he's going to do so much for your team that like, you really are just going to be like, just so appreciative of. And like, when you go back and watch the film, you're going to even see more stuff that he does. So he's just a dynamic like role guy, like kind of like how Chris Middleton was for the Bucks.
Yep.
Just a seamless piece that just like helps you like everywhere for the most part.
Yeah. He's just a safety valve. Like, he is never a deterrent to what you're doing. He is always an addition on both sides of the court, and he can push the pace and get out in the open court and finish in the fast break off of these long lobs from Tyrese Halliburton. He can create his own offense, in isolation if Indiana's in desperate need of a bucket. You know,
Yep.
if they need a stop, he's generally there making a big block or causing a turnover of some fashion. And you're not getting bad basketball out of him
No.
really ever whenever you
No.
need, big things to happen. So
Hmm.
I'm interested to see just how he deals with some of the matchups that Oklahoma City can offer because they can go big and they can he can go up against like the lanky Chet or deal with the physicality of like an Isaiah Hartenstein. Like
Yep.
Alex Caruso's even shown that he can guard. He even gave Nikola Jokic the most problems that a defender can probably give Nikola Jokic, which he still went out and was awesome. But I mean, that he certainly was annoyed as hell whenever
Yeah.
Alex Caruso was on him.
Yeah. No, for sure. I'd like to see that Pascal and Hartenstein or Chet matchup.
Yep.
I think Pascal will do a good job against like Caruso, but I'd like to see Pascal go up against like some bigger bodies and just kind of see what Indiana does with that for sure.
Yeah, because I think if there's anything that Oklahoma City can bring to this matchup that Indiana maybe hasn't necessarily seen as much this postseason, is just like a physicality and like a grittiness
Hmm.
that just I quite frankly I don't know if Cleveland had a whole lot of this year. I don't really like Boston kind of well no they didn't face Boston, my bad. That the Knicks kind of they struggled against physicality and some of those things. So whereas
Hmm.
Oklahoma City, like they are, they're probably they've drawn a lot of complaints on the whistle that they get, but a lot of that is because they come at the point of attack and they play really hard.
Yeah, for 48 minutes. And when you
Yep.
do that for a full season, you're going to be allowed to get away with certain things. So
Yep.
that's why it's important to build your culture and play the same way throughout the whole season so that come playoff time, teams and refs and whoever else knows that, like, okay, this is the style of brand of basketball they're going to play. Like, that's what it is. Like, they're going to
Yeah.
be physical. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Like, it's not a new team changing their game plan saying, like, oh, we're going to start pushing up against guys. Like, well, you didn't do that before. So you start calling fouls, but like, no, you've been doing this all year. So it's like,
Right.
that's how it
You,
is.
you can make small adjustments here and there, but ultimately it's going to come down to who you are and what's gotten you there in the first place. And
Mm-hmm.
for Oklahoma City, like yeah, they can maybe change some matchups or they can maybe, throw out some, like they can maybe play some zones or give like different looks on the defensive end, but you know, they're still just going to play with that physicality and with, just it's going to ultimately come back to their defense. And
Yeah.
if Tyrese still keeps, if he still takes care of the basketball at a high level, if he limits the turnovers in this series, which I know Tyrese, like that's one of the things he hangs his hat on is not turning the basketball over. But Oklahoma City is a team that causes turnovers at a high level, a
Yep.
very high level. Indiana
Yep.
does it too, but Oklahoma City does it to an entirely different level. Like they
Mm-hmm.
demoralized Minnesota and essentially had them looking like they wanted to be anywhere else but on that court at the end of the series. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that because when you see a team just go out and completely demoralize another very talented team that late into the postseason, that's not nothing.
Yeah. No, they play with like definitely like it's just a sense of urgency that kind of like puts teams on their heels. So Indiana's in for a challenge, but I think OKC is in for just as much of a challenge. Like Indiana's not going to back down. I mean, not a lot of people had them going as far as they are now. Like they've been kind of just defying expectations. Like that's what they do. So like I think we're in for a great matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Before I let you go, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about Nikola Jokic, my personal favorite player to watch outside of Detroit, somebody you've been able to be around. Obviously, I'm reading a book about him right now, and
Mm-hmm.
the thing that keeps coming up is just how obviously his brain is a supercomputer, like his processing ability, his ability to read rotations, find guys is unworldly, but
Yeah.
also the thing I keep reading is how much all of his teammates just absolutely love him, and that he's a guy
Mm-hmm.
that guys just absolutely rally around or just enjoy being around. For those that don't know a whole lot about Jokic, because let's be honest, even though he's a three-time MVP, there's still not necessarily that respect from a whole lot. Like the basketball casual might look at Jokic and go, "Wait, that guy's one of the best of the players in the world." What? But
Right.
for those that watch the game, it's like to me, like that's one of the most dominant players I've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, just like being up close and personal, like even just like watching his like pregame shooting, you see it then, like just the touch that he displays. It's like, whoa, this dude is different. And he carries, excuse me, he carries himself like just so humbly. Like he's the type of guy that he doesn't need to go shoot on like the main hoop. Like he'll go on the side hoop and like the practice gym if there's a guy working there. Like it'll be the coaches or like the other players who like tell somebody else like, no, you need to move. That's Nikola. Like get off the hoop. Um, but he's just such like a humble dude that like I think he can come off as a way like if you don't really know him or kind of see him like just once or twice, you're like how much like there's no way this guy is as good as he is. But if you really like watch the game and kind of study what he does and just who he is in general, like just even overseas, like he's a worker, he's super smart. He's just always like a step ahead. It seems like of the opponent. When you're
Yep.
dealing with somebody like that, it's just really tough to game plan for and beat. And so just being on his side and on his team was really cool because like you learn a lot just about the game and just like the way he thinks and just the things he does, like it just starts making your brain think differently and see things differently. So I think being around that dude was like definitely a major, major like just something that I'll remember forever, just part of my career because that was a not many people get to coach that type of talent. And so
Yeah.
the fact that I got to do it and like see it go from like almost the beginning to like to what it is now, like just that growth process was super special.
And I don't know if we're ever going to see a story like his ever again, where
Mm-hmm.
a totally unknown, unrecognized player who was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial, turning into a multi-time MVP who's going to go down as one of the top 15 players to ever play the game. Like that's just unheard of.
Yeah.
And like just especially him growing up in the internet age and with like social media like yeah he grew up in like over in Europe, completely different place, but nonetheless for him to kind of go unrecognized and yeah, if you tune into the tape, like his athleticism is never going to be the thing that jumps off, but I think that's why he can have a he I think that's why he can sustain this for a pretty long time if he wants to, because he's,
Mm-hmm.
like his game is so much, it's tied so much to his ability to process and to pass and create opportunities for his teammates, but also like you said, just his elite touch as a shooter and as a scorer. Like I don't necessarily think his game is going to be one of those ones where we just see just such like a rapid decline. I think can be still really good for a long
Mm-hmm.
time if he chooses to be.
Yeah. No, I agree. He takes care of his body extremely well. Like the work that he puts in is up there with top guys in the league, believe it or not. So,
Yep.
um, he's definitely got the type of career trajectory, like where if he wants to, like he can be good for a really long time, as he's shown. Um, yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, for sure. And if there's anything we saw, just from from watching some of the games this year and just seeing him kind of become a little bit more vocal, that whole narrative of him not caring is just insanely stupid. Like the guy,
Yeah, no, that's that. Every time I hear that, it's just like it's ridiculous. It's like I've literally seen that dude like work out after like post game and change an entire culture of like a team now wanting to go work out after the game. Like, nah, he changed his whole diet. Like, just nah, the dude definitely. You don't get to be that good without caring. Like,
yep,
the league
exactly.
is the league is too good to allow that. So like, you have to care about what you do to be where he is. So
Exactly. Exactly. Couldn't have said it any better myself. The guy can like horses, dang it. Just let him be. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
we all have hobbies. Yeah, it's who cares
Yeah, exactly. Just because his hobby's a lot cooler than yours doesn't
for
mean you
real.
have to go doesn't mean you have to go complain about it, you know?
For real, like he showed me videos of his horses and stuff, and you get like entrenched into it too, and it's a dope hobby for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved hearing the stories of Aaron Gordon going over and spending time with Nikola in the off season and seeing his horses and things like that. Like to me, like if I could be a fly on a wall for any of those like team retreats, it'd be Nikola and his teammates out in his homeland hanging out with his
Right.
horses.
Right. No, see him in his real environment.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Jordan, dude, seriously, this was so much fun, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. I think you're a great basketball mind. You know a ton about the game. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you, and just excited to continue to follow your coaching career and just see where you go. But seriously, man, thanks so much for taking the time and joining me here. This is a lot of fun.
No, I appreciate you having me, Sean. It's been really dope to just connect with Pistons Twitter in general and just all the basketball fans alike. It's been really dope. I appreciate you having me on.
Cade Parker Cunningham made All NBA, which is the big news out of the Pistons world. It was broken earlier in the week by Shams Charania, but also obviously released, by the NBA. Second team All NBA for the guards was Jalen Brunson and Stephen Curry. The first team was Donovan Mitchell and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. It's shocking to say that Stephen Curry should not have been second team All NBA. But like, if you look at the cases between Cade Cunningham and Stephen Curry, literally the only things that would give Steph the edge would be efficiency and, quite frankly, just like career resume.
Right. Efficiency and legacy, right?
Yeah. And I just don't think legacy should come into consideration when you're voting for All NBA.
Yeah.
So
No.
if the only argument is that, well, Cade had higher volume, he had more points, more assists, was a better defensive player, but Steph did all of his stuff at a more efficient rates. Therefore, Steph over Cade Cunningham. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But also, Troy, for Cade, it's kind of a good problem when you can kind of feel like you've been robbed while simultaneously getting an extra $40 million in your contract because of getting All NBA.
Right. No, I think that contract boost is certainly something that he's happy about. But yeah, just kind of go into, the thing with, the second team versus third team. And you look at impact too. I do think we have to look at impact on the team. And Cade's handprints were all over this team's success this year in every way possible. I mean, no words on the podcast right now can express how influential Cade Cunningham was to the Pistons turnaround this past season. So I feel like that has to go a little bit into consideration of how did these individual players help their team too when voting for, first, second, and third team All NBA.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's the tricky thing is I just think overall, you just kind of look at the fact that this is a league where at the end of the day, like, teams like people are going to vote for the players that they're familiar with or the players that they watch. And let's be honest, Stephen Curry is just more available to watch to the public or just in general in more high key games than Cade Cunningham is.
Right.
But if you're the Pistons, again, you just feel awful good about the fact that you have someone who's that good to already be third team All NBA and to be pushing for a cake like to a Stephen Curry for his impact. The thing that's interesting is you look at on off. This is per cleaning the glass, a really good analytics tool. They have expected wins with their overall like efficiency and everything that they bring. And if you look at the analytics, Cade is like a plus 12 expected wins, like essentially wins he's bringing to the table. Steph was technically at like plus 17, but I just don't think that fully like captures the overall impact. I mean, again, like, yes, offensively, Steph was elite as far as his as far as his shooting, but if you even compared to other seasons, it wasn't even like a great year by Steph standards. It was kind of career or even slightly below career averages. So again, it kind of picking straws. They're both amazing players. I don't want to take away from Steph Curry, but it's just the fact that objectively speaking, I just think Cade Cunningham had the better resume this season.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And it sounds like just a little bit that I've seen on Pistons Twitter too. That's kind of the consensus we see with the fan base.
Yep. So naturally, a lot of the conversation immediately went to the ramifications of Cade making All NBA, because a lot of the contracts, there's incentives to where it officially becomes like a supermax extension, to where you get an additional you get additional money added to your deal. For Cade, he got an extra $40 million over the term of the deal, meaning that he's going from 25% cap space to 30% of the cap space. And listen, a lot of people turned it into a negative conversation pretty quickly, which I just find pretty confusing, because the truth of the matter is you as a franchise, you do everything in your power to find a player to that caliber.
Mhm.
And when he proves himself to be worthy of being All NBA, when you have the clarity of having the franchise player, the guy that you can build around, that you have not only a competitive timetable in the immediate present, but also in the distant future, if he continues to stay healthy. Bro, I think that's just the price that you have to pay, and it's worth every dime.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is. You just see how much she's impacted the team. I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but to me, it's just so clear. And I think the points that you brought up there were valid. And I think going into next season, we're going to see similar things.
Yeah, I mean, it just as a leader, I think you just look at what he brought to the team, but also then you just also add the fact that, oh, and also for a lot of the games that he played, he looked like the best player on the court, and he had
Right,
a
right.
really he had a historically great debut for his age in the playoffs, and pushed this Knicks team that made it all the way to the conference finals to 6 games. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, if you're Detroit, you take that and you put its weight in gold.
yeah.
Another thing before we get into the basketball we saw tonight and in the last couple nights, Troy, I'm not sure if you saw this or not, but Shams Charania was in Indianapolis, was at the site of the Pacers game, and he actually went on Pat McAfee's show
I
during the
did.
day,
I
and
sure
he was
did.
asked what he thinks this offseason is going to look like. And the term that Shams used was most craziest offseason, meant to say craziest offseason, perhaps of all time, based on how things are shaking. And the things that like a lot of people like, like Shams have brought up, like Brian Windhorst have brought up, it's not even just the fact that a guy like a Giannis Antetokounmpo can be traded. It's the ripples and the ramifications that cause.
Mhm.
Because once we see players move, then you like that completely changes the equation. Like in the best example of this, they use this as well. I believe Shams used this was like Drew Holiday, like and Damian Lillard. Like when Damian Lillard got traded to the Bucks, Boston kind of was like, well, we should do something. And they
Mhm.
went out and got Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
So
Right.
naturally, if there's going to be a lot of player mobility this season, a lot of teams are going to react accordingly.
Mhm, mhm.
And if there is indeed going to be this much movement via trades, it's impossible to think that the Pistons won't at least play some part in that.
Yeah.
Whether they go out and they go big fish hunting, whether they're assisting in facilitating assets to add to the warshed for later on, that remains to be seen. But Troy, it looks like this is not going to be a quiet offseason at all for any fan base in the league, based on what can happen this summer with all the rumors we're hearing.
Which is just so exciting, Sean, because it really shows that, of course, we get basketball for 8 months out of the year, but the 4 months of the off season, we're looking for things to shape up and to get really interested in and to look forward to next season. And I think you're right. The tweaking to me is what's going to be most fun, because we already know the stuff with Kevin Durant, we already know the stuff with Giannis. So it's a matter of, you're right, both conferences, whatever conference, Giannis ends up going to. And if KD stays in the West, it's going to be watching some of those other teams that, feel like they're contenders, make some moves and some tweaking to compete with whatever teams land them. So like you said, and I just think that's an exciting part for the league, because we talk about how deep the league is, but we look at salary caps as well. We look at luxury tax and just so much that goes into this offseason as well. And that all plays, a factor into making sure that your roster is how you want it to be. And is your roster able to compete come opening night in mid-October? So, Sean, that's just really exciting for me to hear. And I know that was music to your ears as well.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, look, as great as it is for guys to stay long term in certain places, the reality of the NBA is player mobility is essential for both sides. For players, like you have to be able to find your next place if it's not working out for a team, and teams need to get assets in return and to make changes to, make themselves contenders. And listen, with Boston, with Jason Tatum having the injury that he had, that opens up such a great opportunity in the Eastern Conference. As great as, teams like the New York Knicks and Indiana Pacers have played this year, I think if your teams like Cleveland, if your teams, like throughout the conference, you can't help but look at that situation and go, that's a vulnerable top of the conference. Like that is a very open window that you can jump through. And on the Western Conference side of things, you have San Antonio, where if Wemby comes back and a lot of those young players, start to like maximize their potential, they could be in the title picture literally right away. The Thunder aren't going anywhere. So if you want to be able to compete with them, you're going to have to make some massive moves.
Right. And what does that say to a team like Denver or a team like the Lakers, right? Who are not some of those teams that have all the assets in the world, or have that rising star player besides, of course, Luka with the Lakers. But what kind of moves do they do to try to compete with the two teams you mentioned?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is, are they going to have the ability to do so? Like that's the challenge for a lot of teams like the Lakers is, yes, they went out and got Luka Doncic, incredible, like great for their franchise for the next decade. But if they want to make the necessary moves to go out and contend, they might have to contemplate trading an Austin Reeves, which, that's really difficult, because I'm sure when they initially made that trade, I bet part of them thought, man, what an awesome duo we could have going forward for the Lakers for the next 5+ years. But the reality of it is, as great as it is to have another ball handler and a shot creator next to Luka, you truly need a big. You need someone who could be the anchor of your defense, but can also be the rim runner and the lob catcher for a Luka Doncic in that pick and roll. So that's what they need. But Troy, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about the offseason and potential moves. Let's talk about what we just saw over the last couple of days. I think we saw in each conference, like over the weekend, we saw the Knicks and the Timberwolves attempt to make this a series and to make it more competitive. But in both game fours, I think it's appropriate that both the Thunder and the Pacers really just kind of established the tone and came out and essentially both dominated their respective games. And I think that the thing that really stands out to me is depth has won the day, and we're about to see two small market teams with vibrant, like fast-paced rosters that are insanely competitive, that go up against each other. And I think if you're Adam Silver and you're part of the league, like part of the league front office and the commissioner's office, yeah, like you wish you could have a big market for ratings sake, but for the long-term health of the league, you see these two young, fun, dynamic teams in the finals. I think this is great for small markets and for people in the league.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no words that I can say to echo that, Sean. I want to endorse what you said 100%, because you're right. These are teams that have went out, collected assets, built around their stars, recognized who their stars are, actually went out and traded for those stars, respectively, saw that they were both available and cashed in because of potential, which I think is so cool. Looking what the Thunder did with making that trade with the Clippers, and of course what the Pacers did with making that trade with the Kings.
You know what's funny about those trades, by the way? Sorry to interrupt, Troy.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Paul George.
Those are both win now moves by the Kings and by the Clippers.
Oh, yeah. Not what I was going to say.
But the teams that won the day are the teams that took the long road.
Yeah.
And as good as Paul George was at the time, and as good as Domantas Sabonis convinced some sector of Twitter that he was, not really sure who, but apparently it caught the Sacramento Kings front office. They thought that was the right move for the immediate and long-term future of their franchises. And
Yeah.
if you're and not to keep harping on Sacramento, but bloody hell, you chose one guard over the other, and now you have to watch both of them contend in their respective conferences for years to come, not in your uniform.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, because you're right. Fox was the point guard they picked, but now Fox is going to be competing with Wemby. So
not even 3 years later, he's on a different team.
Yeah. So, but yes, so exciting to watch. Of course, I got to watch a lot of games in person this year. Don't think I'll be going to any more this year, unfortunately. But I think it's super fun to see this team compete. I mean, I couldn't have predicted this even a month ago, Sean. I knew that they were
a company card, Troy. Why not?
Yeah. I'm really, really happy for both franchises. Again, they're both up 3-1. They haven't clinched it yet, but I think we both know that that the Thunder are going to be out to win that game 5, as well as the Pacers. But even if the Pacers lose that game 5, they come home for a game 6 in their building. And the Knicks just seem beat up too.
Yeah, especially Karl Anthony Towns at the end of that game. Knees colliding with Aaron Nesmith, and as great as Cat played in the last couple of games, as far as his late game heroics and some of his isolation scoring, he just looks hobbled. And at a certain point, a team just can't overcome all these different ailments. And then you also just throw in the fact that this Knicks team is beaten up. They look tired. They're older. They don't play a fast pace, whereas Indiana, pace is literally in the name of the game for them. They are pushing the tempo. They are getting in the open court. When they are at their best is when Tyrese Halliburton gets his team moving in the break, and then they have a outnumbered opportunity to go and get a bucket. Like, that is when the Pacers are at their best. When the Knicks slow it down.
Playing all year, Sean. I mean, and last year too. Even they made the Eastern Conference Finals last year too, and because they pushed the ball, they have this fast-paced offense that just defenses don't know how to handle, and
because they get absolutely exhausted.
Yeah. Which, how do you see that be? How do you see that be matched up with the Thunder? Because we've been praising their defense all year long. But
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because I think if there's any team that plays in a similar way to the to the Pacers, it's probably the Thunder. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I was talking to someone over the last weekend, and I said it's funny, like the Thunder almost kind of play like a supercharged version of the Pistons, where their offense is predicated on causing turnovers and pushing the ball up the court. Like, when they play in the half court is when they get uncomfortable, similar to the Pacers. So I think this is going to be a really fast-paced series. And I think the fact that they're both extremely deep allows them to be able to handle that fast tempo. I do think that looking at, because if we start assuming that this is going to be the finals, which 96% of the time teams in this position up 3-1 win the series. So let's assume that's going to be the finals. My biggest thing I look at is kind of like what I said going into the Timberwolves Thunder series is, well, what's Julius Randle going to be able to do against this Thunder defense? Turns out nothing. My question is, and I think this is a better player than Julius Randle, but what's Pascal Siakam going to be able to do against this Thunder defense? He's going to face Chet Holmgren. I think there's going to be a lot of points where Alex Caruso is up against him, which Alex Caruso has been able to cause havoc for bigs this postseason. Like, he has been unbelievable on both sides of the court. And the other thing as well is if Jalen Williams shows up the way that he's shown up in this series, how do you beat that team 4 times? I just don't. I've been saying that all year long, but it just rings true. Like, yeah, they had that 40-point loss, which I was just absolutely like speechless by, because it's like, well, that's just not them. Like, what the hell was that? But the credit to them, one of the youngest teams in the league, they came out immediately the next game. They answered the bell and pretty much controlled it the entire time. So I don't want to rule out the Pacers, because These are both young teams. They're both going to be kind of in uncharted waters. If anything, the Pacers have the experienced star when it comes to finals basketball. But on the other hand, when you look at the talent and you just look at, like, if you look at how they stack up, I mean, the Oklahoma City Thunder, to me, just that's been the best team in the world. That has been the bar.
Yeah. No, I mean, I see all of that because especially the depth of the Thunder, and we were texting a little bit of the Pacers. That's one of their strong things too, is depth. But the Thunder just have a whole nother level of depth because we haven't even talked about Alex Caruso, right? We haven't even talked about
Henrich Williams.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Henrich Williams.
Yeah.
How about him? Coming in, hardly playing at all before this series, and has been like an absolute hound on the defensive side, hits threes when needed. Isaiah Joe, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Hartenstein, how awesome he's been for them. Yeah. Like, you just go down the list, and it's just like, we didn't even bring up Lou Dort.
Yeah.
And so if there's anyone that can like match or exceed the way that Tyrese Halliburton plays, it's SGA. I mean, he's looked every bit the MVP over the last couple of rounds. And so I don't want to rule out the Pacers because they're the hottest team. Like, they're one of the hottest teams in basketball since January 1st. The thing is that the only team I believe that has a better record than them since January 1st is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that damn thing since October.
We talked about a week ago how this is going to be one of the most fun matchups we've seen in Western and Eastern Conference finals in at least a decade. You still agree with that, Sean?
I think one of them has lived up to the bill. I think Pacers-Knicks has been everything we thought it would be, regardless of the results of the game. They've all felt extremely close. Both teams I think, are as competitive as they can possibly be. You can tell they really don't like each other. They respect each other, but they don't like each other. And it's been insanely physical. I feel like the refs have done a good job of really staying out of the results of everything. It's come down to late game heroics. And I mean, my God, that shot from game one, we're going to be replaying that for years. Like, that's going to be in the hall this summer.
Yeah.
And on the Thunder Wolves side, to me, it just feels like for the second year in the row, we just drank the Timberwolves Kool-Aid just a little bit too early. Yeah. And as great of a story as they've been, you want to talk about teams that are going to be in a really freaking weird spot this summer? Talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, because they're going to have to go out. They have to figure out what they're going to do with Julius Randle. They're probably going to want to bring him back with how good he's been. But like, what do you sign Julius Randle? He's going to want his money. And then you think about the fact that Naz Reid is going to be in the free agency market. He's going to be probably one of the hottest commodities of the summer as far as free agents go. You're probably not even going to be able to bring him back. And so you have this really expensive roster that clearly has a cap on itself. And you like, really the only way that like this team is going to be able to elevate to that next level is if some of those young guys that they went and got, like Rob Dillingham, like that's the guard. Excuse me. That's the guard from Kentucky that they went and traded for in the draft this year, I believe. Guys like that are going to have to step up and become the players that they hope that they can be. Jaden McDaniels needs to be able to become more of a consistent offensive threat. Otherwise, this is about as good as it's going to get. And most importantly, Anthony Edwards needs to grow up. Just simple. He's been an awesome player. The fact that he can even get you this far at 23 is incredible. Even with the immaturity issues, we don't even need to get into the off-court stuff. I don't really feel like that's like what this podcast is about. What I can tell you is if you just search Anthony Edwards on Google and look at his personal life, that information is readily available. But beyond that, him coming out afterwards saying that he doesn't feel like he struggled, that he didn't have enough shots to struggle. It's like, oh, well, you're the franchise player. You're the guy who's being talked about as one of the next faces of the league, whether you want it or not. Seemingly you don't mind some of the perks that come with it, the commercials, the shoe deals, the endorsements, all of those things. But the accountability piece, he just seems to not really be able to do well with thus far. So again, I don't want this to sound like I'm down on Anthony Edwards because I think he's going to be a tremendous player, one of the best players perhaps you've ever seen in the game. But I want to talk about the biggest hurdle in the Timberwolves' way. Right now, it's Anthony Edwards growing up.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And a name that you mentioned just briefly that I do want to talk about is Naz Reid, because I tell you, he's another X factor with how much that the Timberwolves have relied on him this postseason and regular season as well. That he's a guy that I think all the rest of the 29 other teams in the NBA would really like to have on their roster as a Naz Reid. So I think that's going to be something that I'm going to be paying really attention to this offseason with them is Naz Reid's future.
I'm going to be interested to see how the trade market impacts where he goes and what teams are going to be able to sign him. Are teams going to clear cap space via trades to go out and try and get Naz Reid? Because certainly there's a lot of teams where Naz Reid makes a lot of sense. Cough, cough. The Lakers, cough, cough. In all seriousness, I think they probably need more of a rim runner, kind of more of a lob guy. But let's be honest, it's also a pretty damn good option to have with Luka in the pick and roll. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. We'll see what they do. But yeah, I just, if I'm Minnesota, as good as you feel about the future, because yes, two conference finals appearances in a row, you objectively have to feel good about where you're at. But if you, at the same time, though, you kind of have to be scratching your head and going, man, as good as the Dallas team was last year, that was a real opportunity. Like this year, you had a chance where this was really, if you think about it, Troy, this is probably one of the best chances people will have to dethrone the Thunder for years to come. If they're healthy, this isn't even the best version of the Thunder. They're younger than the Pistons.
Yeah, right. And we think of the draft capital too that they have.
Yeah. So even when they lose guys via free agency or via trades, because they're inevitably gonna not be able to afford to keep everyone, they have Sam Presti who can supplement those guys via the draft.
Yeah. And bring in hot talent that can be developed and
and that's the thing I don't think enough people talk about is how high their hit rate's been on all these picks.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. It's not just they have picks, but the picks hit because they're high impact guys. You think of like a Casey Wallace kind of guy, and just thinking about getting. I know he was a top 15 pick, but J-Dub was the 12th pick in the draft. I mean, we know as Pistons fans who've hung around that 7, 8, 9, 10 spot for years and years, that can be a really hard place to draft, can't it?
Yep.
But they hit with that, and I don't think the Thunder would be in the finals without, or about to be in the finals without a J-Dub leading the charge.
Without a doubt. And also the fact that you have a Chet Holmgren who
absolutely
has just immediately become the type of player that they needed and is a lot better offensively, a lot quicker than I think a lot of people anticipated.
Right.
Like, and he's I can go out and get you 20 plus points in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Right. He's another one talking about draft. Like they easily could have went with Jabari Smith at 2.
Yep.
But they saw the upside with Chet.
Yep. They identified their guy, and it was an absolute grand slam. Speaking of grand slams, Troy, you hit it out of the park today, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for listening and joining us here on the pod. If you like what we do, be sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court.